Well, hello, everybody. I thought I'd start with a math joke today. Math jokes are really bad, so, but since we got such entertainment from, I'm not Bobo, but I can give you a math joke. So I'm here to tell you that the president's new security measures at the airport are now working. When I was going through the airline terminal, I was walking through the terminal, and they put all that stuff in through the scanner. And on the other side of the scanner, I was pulled out of the line, and they said, "I'm sorry, but we're not going to let you get on the airplane." And in the little plastic box, they had my graphing calculator and my ruler and my straight edge, and they said, "You've been caught carrying weapons of math instruction." Math humor is like the lowest humor of the low. So math teachers, thanks. You'll have to forgive me for that one. But anyway, so I teach at Foothill College. We have a very nice campus. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I use CCCConfer in my classroom. After seeing all your wonderful presentations today, this is going to be decidedly low tech. I came here thinking that I was going to be high tech, and so. All right, so my experience with this came through actually a little story. I want to give you just a short history of how I actually discovered you guys, the CCCConfer people. So it goes something like this. You won't be on time to class if you just woke up and have 10 minutes before class starts. Or will you? So one Sunday morning at 9:50 in the morning, my wife sat up in bed and she said, "I've got class in 10 minutes. I said, "San Jose State's 20 minutes away," and I sort of was talking to her like someone who's talking to someone who's losing their mind. I said, "It's not going to happen. If you're not going to make it to class." She goes, "Oh, no, it's a problem." She sat up in bed, opened her laptop, and then about a minute later, I heard her instructor talking to the students in the classroom, and I said, "What's this?" Because I've taught very low tech with a whiteboard and a whiteboard marker pretty much my whole time up until that moment. And I sort of sat there like a fly on the wall going, "Oh, this is very cool." And it was San Jose State's library science program uses Illuminate, which of course is what you guys have. So to bring a long story to a short conclusion, so I wanted to learn about using Illuminate. I thought this is really cool because as Larry was talking about, asynchronous learning did not appeal to me, and there's some real issues with integrity in math classes, so I wasn't really interested in doing any kind of online learning. But this made me realize, this I can use. I can use this, and I can do it in a hybrid format and replace some of my lecture time online with this wonderful device. And I investigated on getting Illuminate, and I discovered Illuminate is very expensive. So I went to our dean, and he said, "Well, go ahead and find out how much it is." And I found out, and he looked at me, and he smiled, and he laughed. And I said, "Okay, I understand what that means." But one of the colleagues in my division knew about CCCConfer and said, "Why don't you check them out?" And I said, "Okay." And I scheduled a meeting just as a test. I just wanted to see how the interface worked. And then, sure enough, when I launched the interface, Illuminate.com came up, and it was sort of serendipity. It was meant to be. So. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've been using CCCConfer for about 3 years, and this is pretty much how I use it in my classes. So I teach my classes, I don't teach fully online. I teach the definition of hybrid. I don't think anyone has a definition. It just means it's not fully online, as best I can tell. So my definition of hybrid goes something like this. My class meets 2 days a week, 2 hours per week. We do what we call block scheduling. And the 2-day sessions that meet either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, I meet actually in class with the students. So we're just sort of a traditional lecture discussion type environment. But our classes split that 2-hour block on Fridays. So the Monday, Wednesday, Friday would teach, say, the 1-hour block, and then the second hour of the block gets replaced by the Tuesday, Thursday class. And the classes are 5 units because it's a quarter system. So you can actually use the same classroom for 2 classes that way. And that's actually how I use it. It's my Friday component of my classes. One nice thing about that is that when I do have this sort of disasters, I can just tell the students, "Well, see me in class the following week," and we can deal with it. So I can deal with a lot of the online issues about having cell phone numbers and that kind of thing available are taken care of nicely by having that regular in-class component. So my technical issues are simplified by that a bit. You've already, Blaine captured this already, but my first day orientation, on the first day of class, I spend about maybe 20 minutes or more, depending on how much stuff goes wrong, just orienting students to the class. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I gave this to Blaine on the CD-ROM, and you can give it to whoever thinks of it of value for their classroom. And I just some screen captures on how to use the emoticons, how to use the chat room. I don't use the telephone bridge. I strictly use the VoIP. So that's all I use in my classroom. I didn't want to be overwhelmed with all the technology when I was learning how to use the interface, because I just decided, okay, I experimented with a colleague. We had meetings from our offices. So my office to his office, he was the student, I was the teacher, before I was ready to go live with this. And I spent a lot of time doing that and sort of, oh, what does it look like on your end? And I'd run over to his office and, oh, that's interesting. And I'd go back into my office. And so after a few weeks of doing that, where I was building my comfort level, and then I just sort of started using as few of the interface tools as I could, because again, what I discovered was it's quite different teaching with this interface than it is in front of my classroom on a whiteboard, a lot different. And I'll talk a little bit more about that too. But so that's really the first session is about 20 minutes of the orientation, and then I try to cover some new material. So what I've learned to be the key components to a successful class as far as my experimentation goes. I have a greeting. I'll talk a little bit about my greeting. How I use the whiteboard. The chat room, as you've already heard today, is one of the key components, especially with respect to pacing and audience interaction. How I use application sharing, and then also a tool that I've used a little bit, but I'm finding invaluable as I go forward is the web tour. So for the greeting, one thing I discovered with the software was when you walk into a classroom, you've got a group of students, you talk, it's a given that they can hear you and they can see what you're writing on the board. But I quickly realized that when you walk into the CCCConfer interface, that just because the student's name appeared in the participants window didn't necessarily mean that everything was going well at home. So it started out as just, so again, I had sort of a number of serendipitous moments when I was using the interface. And the first serendipitous moments was that the goal was just to make sure that everybody could hear me at home and they could communicate to me either on the VoIP or in the chat room. But what I discovered is that in doing this test to make sure the interface was working, I realized that I'm actually greeting my students virtually, individually, as they walked into the classroom. So it was like I was, virtually shaking each other the hand. Hi, how's it going? Bill, what's, is it working? Can you hear me okay? And he would respond back and he'd say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm in bed this morning, and they'd add little comments. And then it ended up being like, Donna was playing music in the classroom to sort of create a comfortable environment for the classroom. And this sort of was like that for me. It was sort of like, oh, that's interesting. When I walk into a lecture classroom, I sort of greet everybody and smile and start talking. But here I was greeting them individually, and that was sort of like, this is something that I'm actually doing better than in my classroom. And that was sort of the serendipitous moment. And then in terms of disaster recovery, I don't have any other moderators. I think I'm the only one in the math department using this interface right now. So when I do my sessions, I'm everything. I'm my tech support, everything. And so what happens is when students log on, if the interface isn't working and I can't debug it or fix it within 30 seconds to a minute, I just simply record the sessions and I say, okay, I'm not able to fix your problem, and because the whole session will come to a crashing halt if you spend 10 minutes, and if you've got to do that with 2 or 3 students, that's half the class, So what I do is I record all the sessions. I learned how to record the sessions, and if I can't debug in 15 seconds to 30 seconds, then I just say, well, it's being recorded. Watch the meeting online. If you have issues, you can come see me in class. So those kinds of things have helped me deal with those issues. So I don't spend a lot of time debugging, and the recordings was like that. I started out originally, I was a little scared about using the recording, so I wasn't recording the classes, and then that was a real problem, because then the student would say, well, I missed that whole hour of class. That's really a shame, that's not fair. And I said, okay, well, I better figure out how to record my sessions. And since I've been doing that, that's worked very well. As far as the whiteboard goes, so a lot of you have already been talking about the toolboxes you use. So my particular toolbox involves a Wacom Bluetooth. It's wireless graphics tablet, so at least I can sort of stand up and move around the classroom when I want to try to give some animation to my own presentation, instead of sort of sitting at my chair and talking into my screen. I do have a headset microphone, not as high-tech as Michael's. I get whiplash when I'm talking fast and animated, so I think I'm going to have to look at your Bluetooth. I've got to, I didn't want the USB microphones, let me move this to the second one. The headset microphone that I use, I actually went down to a music store and bought a nice Shure headset microphone, and I notice you're using a Mackie mixer over there. I bought one of those, and I bought a TIAC analog to digital converter to get as high quality audio. I wanted the audio to be crisp. I wasn't really happy with the audio that came through on the USB mic, so I spent a little money, sort of a splurge there, and bought some better quality equipment. And I'm pretty happy with how things come through using that. So. And then for my graphing calculator, since I use the graphing calculator extensively in my math classroom, I use TI has a smart view, and it basically is a software version of a graphing calculator that students can see. And I'm sure you'll see this more than once today. So, as far as the interface goes, learning how to write online, you can kind of see, use this. All this notation, this doesn't look great, but if you compare what I was doing 2 years ago with what this is really good. Because, you know, those of you that have used the Wacom tablets know you know, like I'll be sitting, I've got the tablet in my lap and I'm doing this and I'm looking at the screen. And the first few lectures, I should have recorded them for comic purposes, actually. Fortunately for me, it was a calculus class. The students were really good. And they were sort of treating me with great care, and they were being very nice to me. It was sort of like, well, you know, what is that character over there? What's that? And after a few weeks, I said, well, geez, you know, this experiment's gone terribly. I was really thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. I just can't get this eye coordination. And I've talked to some instructors at our school because of that one thing, you know, are not using the interface because they just can't get beyond that sort of comfort level. And the alternative is a, you know, $1,000 graphics tablet with a screen on it. Those are much more expensive. And, you know, I don't have that much money, and my dean isn't going to be buying that for me anytime soon. So I had to sort of figure this out. The other thing, and some of you have echoed this, is that when you're actually in the interface, it's not just a matter of learning how to draw on the whiteboard. When I'm actually teaching, 3 things are happening simultaneously, and that was a real sort of shock. I sort of naively went into it thinking, okay, I'll just write on the whiteboard. The students are there. I can hear them on the interface. Everything's just great. But I quickly realized that you actually have to do 3 things simultaneously. You've got people arriving late, and I turn on their tools, and the tools I let them use are the microphone, the voiceover internet protocol there. And then also the chat room. I don't allow them, I accidentally had the whiteboard on one day and I was lecturing and circles and squares started appearing on the screen. I'm going, what in the heck is wrong with this interface? You know, it's malfunctioning, you know, there's all these characters appearing out of nowhere. And then I realized, duh, you know, the whiteboard is on and students are drawing during my, how dare them? You know, they should be paying attention to me, and they were doodling on my whiteboard. So I'm watching them. So simultaneously, I'll be talking, working with the graphics tablet. Originally, this was really, really intimidating. I mean, it was so difficult to get down. So I'm talking on the interface. I'm drawing on the tablet, trying to coordinate all that. I'm looking at who's arriving late. I click on their 2 tools that I'm going to enable as they arrive. I'm monitoring the chat room. Some of the students will ask questions in the chat room and not raise their hand in the interface. You know, when they click on the little raise your hand icon, you get a little bell. But some of them have just, they get so into the discussion that they just start asking questions in the chat room, forgetting that they need to raise their hand to capture my attention. So it's like, okay. So I'm monitoring those 3 things, and I'm writing and I'm drawing, and I was like, good God, this is really difficult. And after a few years, a couple of years, I'm now doing it sort of okay, but I really had to relearn teaching, and when I walked in, I really thought that this was just going to be a given, that I would just be able to just transfer my whiteboard into my graph. I had the hardware that I needed, and everything else was just going to be, you know, just very straightforward, and it wasn't. It was a real surprise. So anyway, the chat room is where all the pacing and interaction occurs. So. One thing, again, this is where the CCCConfer does a better job than what I can do in the classroom. When I'm lecturing at a whiteboard and I'm giving my presentation and I'm writing stuff, You know, you're all teachers, so you know you can look at a student's eyes and you know they don't get it. They say yes, they get it. You say, do you guys get it? And they say yes, and they're smiling, and you know looking into their eyes, no, they don't get it. You're going to need to redo everything. You can't see that online. I mean, in the classroom easily. I mean, you sort of, you pretty much use eye contact completely. You could maybe walk around the classroom as they're working on stuff and look at various problems, but what the chat room allowed me to do is, as I'm actually doing, so the way I lecture is decidedly low tech. I have my lectures. I don't upload lectures in PowerPoint. So what I do is I have PDFs of my lectures that I've created in Word. And I actually just capture the text from the PDF using the little camera icon, the screen capture icon. And I just copy that in and size it so that students can read it. So sometimes I have some resizing, very low tech. So all of my actual lectures on my class are just screen captures. That's all I use. But it's worked very well for me. And as I'm lecturing over here, I'll have them doing various problems. You can see the problems, but I don't write anything initially. I'll say, okay, here's a function. We're going to evaluate this function. And so as we're doing this, I'll have them put all their answers in the chat room first. So that immediately forces my pacing because I only move as fast as the class is moving. And once they've got the correct answer here, I go on to the next one and so on and so forth. But what I realized as I was doing the chat room is I'm actually able to look simultaneously at all of their notebooks. As they're putting the stuff down, I immediately see who's getting it, who's not getting it. And I won't sort of scare you with any mathematics here. The math teachers will see this. But in this last expression, we were doing a plus 1 over a horizontal fraction bar, a minus 1. And somebody used a slash bar. And as it turns out, a plus 1 slash a minus 1 is not equivalent to that. And this ended up being a great teachable moment. This was a problem in not understanding how order of operations work. And so I had a nice discussion here for 10 minutes on this incorrect use. And the point is I would have never captured that without the chat room interface. So it's like you're able to look at each of the students' notebooks and see what they're doing. And that's been a great tool, actually. That's one of my things that I like most about the interface. And so again, as I said, so by allowing the students to put stuff in first, I'm immediately forced to do pacing and I get the interaction that I want. Another thing about this is I move more slowly in this interface. Real time in this interface is not equal to real time in the classroom. What I can do in a whiteboard in an hour is much more than what I can do in this. Because of this pacing, because I'm forcing myself and the students to do the interaction, I find I move much more slowly. And that would be an issue because, in a math class, you never get through all the stuff you should cover in a quarter. What I realized was at the end of the session, because I was at the end of the session, it took me a little while. I'm kind of slow. It took me a little while to actually realize this, but at the end of my sessions, I realized that although my students have to go to class, I don't. And if I'm behind on one of my online Fridays, what I would do is some students could stay around, usually maybe half the class didn't have another class to go to. And I would continue the recording going till I got through whatever I needed to get through that week. And it's recorded, and then I would say, for those of you that have to go to class, that's fine, you can leave. And then sometime this weekend, come back, view the recording of the session, and you can bring questions to class on Monday or Tuesday when we meet. So that's also worked out really well for me. As far as application sharing goes, this is the TI emulator software. And so I have a graphing calculator, again, with the recording feature. You get the added benefit of if you don't have to demonstrate the same thing over 100 times as people don't get it or they miss class or whatever. So I can get the graphing calculator into the classroom, and then two, with the recording of the sessions, I can play it again, and that's a wonderful tool. I think one of the greatest things that CCCConfer is providing and other methods in mathematics, it's nice being able to have little presentations of short program snippets of how to solve a problem or how to do something on the calculator that students can access 24/7, and that's something this tool and websites really do a wonderful job. Something that I'm using more recently, as I discovered today, looking at all of Larry's great stuff, there's an unbelievable amount of stuff on the internet, and some of it's not so good, but a lot of it is very good. And So as I discover all these wonderful Java applets, we use Stewart's books and Stewart's calculus textbook. Book publishers are just doing this naturally. They're developing all these Java applets and other things. And so, whoops, sorry. This is demonstrating a concept from calculus. You guys don't have to worry about that. But so what I do is, as Donna was saying, it's sort of nice at home. If I want to demonstrate something on the internet, I just type a URL, go in, and launch the Java applet, and it's there. If I have to do this in the classroom, then I have to plug into the data projector, boot up the computer in the class, plug the thing in, wait for it to log in. It's 5 minutes before I can do anything with the internet. Here, everything is just there at your fingertips. It's wonderful having that power on your computer at home. That's something. The point was made that wouldn't that be great if we could do that in the classroom? I don't know about at your schools, but at our schools it would be hard for the tech services people to keep up with all that and keep it maintaining and running. When a bulb goes out of a data projector, it's a multi-day affair. When you're teaching, if something doesn't work 99.9% of the time, it's not going to get used. I won't use it. It's got to be flawless, and it's got to work perfectly all the time. So this is something I'm doing more and more with, and it's just built right into CCCConfer, so that's great. Some final thoughts. A thank you to all the CCCConfer people. I've heard other people having issues. Maybe because I'm not using much of the interface. I only had there's only 2 times in the last 2 years that I've had the system crash. The first time it crashed, my power went out at home, so you guys are off the hook on that one. The second time it crashed, I had some issue. I don't even remember what the issue was, but I had an 8 o'clock class starting. It was 7:30 in the morning. I couldn't get the interface to work. And so I sent an email off to Palomar College at the tech. I said, I'm having a problem. And Donna responded within 15 minutes. And she said, this is what you got to do. I'm fixing it on my end. And I had my class at 8 o'clock. You need that level of customer support if you're going to use this. If this interface were to crash twice in a quarter, if I were to be embarrassed in front of my students by technology that wasn't working twice, I would not continue using it. And you guys have kept it running, and when I've had issues, it's been dealt with fast, and that's really important. And it's been a huge deal for me. So thank you. People have already talked about this today. When you're lecturing in class, it's pretty easy to just send your students a handout or a class activity based on what you're lecturing on with file transfer. That's great. It's much easier than having to type up an email and create an attachment. So, and then, as others have said, I use the emoticons too, since the students can't actually see me. The webcam, I'm not sure. I'm a little worried about slow internet connections and whether the students will actually be able to see the image on the webcam and whether that will slow everything down. So I'm not sure I want them to see my smiling face or unhappy face when they're doing something. So I do use the emoticons. If they get something wrong, then I sort of give them the thumbs down, and it's done tongue in cheek, But so those work okay. Those aren't a perfect replacement for an in-class experience. So maybe I'll use the webcam in the future. And then future exploration, I use polling a little bit, but you have to, stop the polling and then publish the poll, and that takes a little bit of time. So, and then the web quizzes I'm aware of, but I haven't used it all, and so I may start looking into that.